20th of June 2023. This Skidmark is once again one of that what the fuck moments, and this one is about Putin. And if you don't like Putin or you're a Russophobe, then I suggest you don't listen to this Skidmark, because you're going to hear things here that is going to disturb you deeply and most probably upset a lot of your preconceived ideas about Putin. The reality is, Putin is a remarkable man, and we need to take note of that, because at this point in time, he is basically influencing the lives and the future of every citizen of the West. So, sit back and relax and just listen. Costs you nothing to listen. Doesn't harm you to listen. God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth for a good reason. You have been built to be able to listen better than speak. Now, before I start this, I want you to look at this meme, because it carries a message. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced on Russian television that the New World Order has collapsed, claiming that the world is now the latest contraction to the death of the elite regime. Putin told Russian broadcaster NTV that the new global order has failed due to the awakening of people around the world, who have come to realize the insidious truth about the elite's plans. The best is yet to come. And then it says, "Don't worry, America, I got this." He may as well have said, "Don't worry, the Western citizens, I got this." And he has it. Trust me. Putin is a master of strategy. And he has got one big advantage. He does not respond emotionally. You cannot wind him up and expect him to respond, because he doesn't allow people to wind him up. The whole Western mighty media machine is working against him. The EU leaders, shithouse leaders, and Western puppets are all hiding, posturing, and bragging behind the media shield, and they are coated in liberal layers of arrogance. What they fail to acknowledge is that their shield is a mushy pond of deceit, lies, and corruption. One of the most applied strokes of sewer sludge that all of them use frequently on Putin is, "Russia invaded Ukraine illegally." From the start, Putin countered this with references to the Minsk agreements, Donbass killings, and the Zazi presence in Kiev. I don't know if he really knew the Minsk agreements was a farce, or did he feel it intuitively. But, be it as it may, recently Merkel and a French politician both admitted that the Minsk agreements was a ploy to deceive Russia, while the West built up the Ukraine army and prepared to deploy NATO bases and nukes right on the border of Russia. Now, that's the reality. And just for those uninformed Russophobes, the Minsk agreements were guaranteed by France and Germany. I think there was another party, but those two were the guarantors of that agreement. Plus, that agreement was unanimously ratified by the UN Security Council. So, they are not fixations. It's a real agreement. Most recently, Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine that was installed by the Americans after the 2014 coup, himself bragged about how they deceived Russia. He also confirmed the military actions against the citizens of Donbass. And then we've got that leader from one of that post-stamp Baltic states that called for NATO to give Ukraine nukes. And then Lindsey Graham that bragged on TV that dying Russians was the best investment the US has ever made. What decent human being can associate with this type of talk? Did the Western media acknowledge this deceit? No, they did not. They simply dropped it into their cesspond shield. This is not a shield. It is merely a divide between the West and Putin, not a shield. They are banking on Putin not wading across the cesspond and grabbing them by the throats. They are partially correct. Putin is too much of a gentleman to wade into Shuritz. But he plays with a plan, never reacting on impulse and never on emotion. When asked about Graham's statement, he simply replied that Graham is entitled to his opinion and he, Putin, will not respond. When asked about the depleted uranium ammunition from the UK, he simply said, I would urge them not to do it, but Russia will take care of that. We all know how Russia handled that and the subsequent poison cloud that drifted over Europe on the wind, even up to the UK. Putin has surrounded himself with highly skilled and capable men. And if you look at this image, you can see Sergei Lavrov and Shoigu, both very capable guys. That is his Minister of Defense and his Minister of Foreign Affairs. And then he's got another gem, the Foreign Affairs spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova. And listen to this. I propose to recognize the European Parliament as a sponsor of idiocy. Maria Zakharova, Russian Foreign Minister spokesperson. I like this girl a lot. And then here is the opposing team. Look at that White House team. Look carefully. See what you see. Don't see what you think you see. Look at it and see what it really is. They are part of the team that represents the West today. They're from the highest office in the West, the shithouse in Washington. Think about that. And then I've got this image for you of EU Ministers of Defense. Yes, it's a little bit old image, but nothing changed much there. It's still mostly a crowd of chicks in charge of critical departments of governance in the EU. It is amazing how many chicks are in the decision-making positions. I've got nothing against that, in principle. But the reality is there are certain things that men just do better than women for the simple reason, in general, men don't tend to be emotional. Men is realistic most of the time. Men is genetically designed to be warriors. That is the difference. Look at the Russian Minister of Defense. If you look at that man, you can see, and instinctively you can associate him with the task that he has. And he either installs confidence in you or he makes you wonder. But Shoigu has proven himself. Look at these teams, think about them, make your decision and place your bet. Okay, let's recap. The deceit around the Minsk agreements is proven. The winner is Putin. The DU ammunition dump was destroyed. One for Putin. Before I step away from this, never forget how the West is pouring money in. Money they actually don't have. How the EC under Van der Crazy is deindustrializing Germany, with the result that the German Minister of Finance informed the EU over the weekend that Germany can no longer finance the EU and EC. This is going to have far-reaching effects on the whole EU and all those foster countries that were dragged into the EU-SSR. Take note, the EU-SSR. Purely to encroach on Russia and expand NATO. They are going to get a rude awakening. And why do I say EU-SSR? I'm saying that for those uninformed people that are still trying to claim that Putin wants to reconstruct the USSR. Putin said it in an interview that I listened to. Anyone that thinks to reconstruct the USSR is an idiot. That thing collapsed because it couldn't work. Why would you reconstruct something that failed? But that, the MSM will never tell you. The handouts from the EU to finance these foster countries and their puppet bureaucracies is going to dry up, and they will suddenly find that their citizens are going to be very upset. Instead of focusing on their own citizens and economies, the puppet bureaucrats have been partying on the tab of the EU. Well, that tab is now going to turn into an IOU. When the first batch of sanctions was unleashed by the West, a reporter asked Putin, "Why don't you turn off the taps on the oil and gas?" The MSM masturbators told you he can't because that is how he finances his war. They should have listened to Putin's response instead of doing their usual propaganda masturbation. Putin said, "I saw what happened when the USSR collapsed, and it was devastating to the ordinary workers and citizens. If I turn the gas and oil off, millions of people will lose their employment and income. It will be horrendous suffering for the people. My fight is not with the citizens of the EU, but with the politicians. If they shut the oil and gas off, they will have to face their citizens." Did MSM report this? I didn't see anything. I saw this in the alternative media. No, their journalists rambled on about the illegal invasion. We all know how desperate the West is to drive a wedge in between China and Russia. The West is pouring weapons into Ukraine, and they are running out of stuff to give. More importantly, they are running out of ammunition. Their biggest fear is that China starts supplying stuff to the Russians. They know they cannot match that. Iran aiding Russia was already a big blow to them. Suddenly they realized Iran is not so crippled and helpless from all their sanctions. Did the MSM shout it out? Complete with warnings? No. They kept on masturbating to the tune "Putin is bad." We know Xi Jinping is a very skillful diplomat, something the West will never admit, but the fact speaks for itself. Xi Jinping is not an idiot, and although China has a good grip on the West in general, due to the fact that the West depends heavily on trade with China, Xi knows that additional Western sanctions could hurt its economy. Not fatal, but it will be irritating. So he went to Moscow. Directly after that visit, he confirmed his friendship with Putin, but said that China will stay neutral. This was very frustrating to the West. They have burned all bridges with Russia and desperately needed someone to put pressure on Putin. Xi clearly refused to be that someone. I was always wondering what exactly did Putin share with Xi to secure his friendship. Although they are both kingpins to BRICS, there must have been something else. Xi did indicate earlier that wars to annex regions are not his cup of tea, and a well-known weapon of the West. MSM painted the invasion of Ukraine as a Russian annexation of more territory, and this is something Xi will not be comfortable with. seeing how the US is trying to lure China into a similar fight over Taiwan. At SPIEF 2023, Putin showed me and the world something that I am sure he shared with Xi in Moscow. Putin showed the Istanbul draft agreement between Russia and Ukraine, signed by Ukraine. This document proves that Russia was willing to negotiate to end the war. What is more, Russia pulled its forces back from Kiev as soon as the team in Istanbul indicated that an agreement was reached but not signed yet. Did the MSN report this truthfully? No. Did Ukrainians and their puppet masters ever reveal the content of the agreement? No. Instead, they continued their masturbation and flooded us with Kucha, massacre bullshit story. Now replace that K with a B because I can't use that word on this platform. We know Boris the Clown torpedoed that Istanbul agreement. I believe Zelensky signed Ukraine's and his death warrants by listening to Boris. So, she saw the document, and I'm sure Putin shared some of the true atrocities of the Donbass with him. These things surely partly contributed to Xi's confirmation of his friendship with Putin. The Russian MIC is running smoothly and is supplying what the troops need. Meanwhile, the West urges Ukraine to be frugal with weapons and ammunition. What the hell is that? It is a war, not a game. To me, I smell panic. Just recently, Xi issued a warning to the West. He clearly stated that he will not sit by and see the West overrun Russia. If he sees that danger, China will help Russia. Up to here, it is clear Putin is the chess master. But he is very informed and a clever player. When he saw that our own Cyril is desperate for some limelight, he played along. He invited Cyril and other African leaders to present their peace plan to him. The mere invitation sent waves through the non-West and gained lots of support for the previously colonized and suppressed countries. Putin scraped the PR medals in, but he always knew that no peace plan will work, that Cyril and companions have concocted. China tried and failed. What did these guys think they could achieve? But he saw other opportunities. Cyril was way too arrogant to see the danger signs and walked right into it. The fiasco in Poland revealed the incompetence of the ANC cabal, and as a bonus, they played the race card in response to the Polish insistence on legal processes. That was a huge mistake. The ANC boldly displayed their deeply entrenched dependence on racism. Was this planned by Putin? I'm beginning to think so. Why? Well, Russia has 190 ethnic groups and over 2,000 cultural groups, and the Russian government has zero tolerance for discrimination. Zero. Go and check for yourself. I'm sure Putin knows exactly what the ANC is doing here in South Africa with their racist policies. She is also heavily under attack for racism by MSM. He knows how this racism plaster card is working. He and Putin has the dilemma that a member of BRICS is actually doing these racist things that the West so love to plaster all over every country before they bomb the shit out of them. Neither of them could afford to rebuke the ANC publicly, because that will harm their declared commitment of a non-interference in domestic issues of their partners. This is a very important commitment, and the one thing that is drawing members to join BRICS. Putin knew Cyril will fail in Kiev, and the Polish fiasco was a bonus. What did he get out of it? He can use the failure in Kiev to counter the West's claim that Russia is the aggressor and don't want to talk. And he already did use it. At SPIF 2023 when he revealed the Istanbul Draft Agreement. 2. Unwittingly, the Cyril support team revealed their incompetence and addiction to racism to the whole world. My sources gave very little airtime to the actual meeting in St. Petersburg between Putin and the Cyril gang. From the pictures I saw, Putin was friendly and courteous as usual, but I did not really see a very buddy-buddy interaction between him and Cyril. I may be wrong. I have a suspicion that there were some private exchanges between Putin and Cyril. What was said is obviously not for public consumption. But I'm sure Putin and Xi is not happy with the social and economic implosion happening under the ANC. Russia and China is not in the charity business, and they are also not in the senseless loan business. They invest in infrastructure, and they expect actually demands returns on their investment. They know every cent invested in a foreign country deprives their own citizens of something, and both of them are committed to growing their own economies and bettering the lives of their own citizens. So foreign investment must benefit their countries. Not like the US that piss billions out overseas while their own citizens are sleeping under bridges and their infrastructure is crumbling. So maybe I'm naive, but I have a feeling that Xi and Putin is beginning to turn the screws on Cyril's pedestal. Cyril's fence sitting is well known, but I think he has now landed on a spot on the fence with a fence post up his arse. I think Cyril's high-flying days are over. The landing gear is already out. He's heading for a landing. Will it be a soft landing or a crash? That I don't know. But I have a feeling there is a Russian in the control tower. The jubilating blind and uninformed crowd that is cheering for BRICS is going to find out that you need to bring something to the table. Putin and Xi is not going to allow you to carry Checkers bags full of food from the table home. They're not going to allow that. In conclusion, Putin is playing chess while the West is playing snakes and ladders. Putin and Xi are formidable strategists, and Cyril is not in their league. They are not going to allow the ANC to embarrass BRICS. What are they going to do? I don't know. But if I was in the ANC, I would take time out and go sit under a tree and think. The ancient bond with the USSR is not going to count much. This is 2023, and BRICS is too important for the plans of Xi and Putin to allow sentiments of a bygone era to interfere with BRICS. They both know what the capabilities of South Africa is, and they both know that BEE and affirmative action killed the economy and devastated the industrial base. They both have great support structures in their countries for their farmers. They see what this ANC is doing to our farmers. They know that famine will come. They are not going to bail a BRICS member out that is suffering from self-inflicted harm, especially if that harm could have been easily avoided. The ANC better take note that their execution of the cabal instructions is steering them on a collusion course with Xi and Putin. The cabal wants famine, and the ANC is trying to deliver. Both Putin and Xi can clearly see what is going on in Zimbabwe, and the end result was for Zim's war on the white farmers. Just for the record, these jubilating racist supporters of Russia, Putin is white. Think about that. Putin is not a communist. He actually loathes the communists for what they did to Russians. And before you scream China is communist, go listen to my Skidmark on China's political system. By the way, I read an article about the meeting in St. Petersburg between Cyril's gang and Putin, and the commentator says very little attention was paid to the Kiev visit. Apparently, Putin explained to them why the grain deal is not going to be extended and how Russia will ensure grain reaches Africa. So, there's the real reason for that visit. Putin is once again one step ahead of the Western masturbators. He knows they will scream that Africa will starve when he does not renew that grain deal, and hope that Africa join their choir. Now the African leaders know that the cancellation of the grain deal will not affect them. All I'm asking you is to think about what I said. Really think, and then form your opinion. There is so much misinformation being spread around the globe about Putin, but never will they actually credit him for the decent things he's doing. And I think in the years to come, the people, the decent people of the West, will realize that they owe Putin a hell of a lot. Because Putin said to the globalists and the Satanists, this is a line you will not cross. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. It's important that you share. People need to relearn how to think and stop just gulping up the bullshit the media is feeding us.